Lecture is about how to maximize indoor environments when thinking how to promote children's play. So this lecture is a little shorter in terms of slides and me talking because I would like you to be working through some lessons at a website called the Virtual Lab School. So this is a great resource for you as an early educator just in general, but it's also applicable to this lecture and our next one where we're talking about indoor and outdoor environments and just environments in general. So I'd like you to start with doing this first lesson. So this is just about environments, learning environments in general, and how to best promote and maximize children's play. So start here, do this Virtual Lab School Learning Environments and Introduction lesson, and then we'll move on to talking a little bit on the slides, and then there'll be another Virtual Lab School lesson for you at the end of this lecture. Now that you've had time to do the Virtual Lab School lesson, the general one about environments, let's dig into some of the things that we need to be paying attention to, hopefully that you were learning about in the lesson as well. So one is that we want to pay attention to something called aesthetics. So aesthetics may not be a word that you're familiar with, but I am quite certain that you are familiar with something being aesthetically pleasing. So aesthetics is how things look, how they sound, how they smell. And as humans, we are drawn to environments that look good, smell good, sound good, feel good, and we know them when we see them. So if you walk into someone's home and you just feel like it's a good place to be, or if you come into a business and you enjoy being there, or a hotel that has done a nice job with elements of design, you're probably responding to the aesthetics of that particular environment. So we want to create the same kinds of environments for children. Children have to spend a lot of time at school, and it is kind of stressful, and so we want to do as many things as possible to minimize that stress and make them feel good about the environments that they're spending a lot of time in. So one is we want to pay attention to color. So I know that historically children's classrooms have been a jingle jangle of bright, bold, primary colors, but we know through research that this is not actually the best kind of color environment for young children, particularly those bold, bright, loud, kind of harsh colors. They actually contribute to poorer behavior and less concentration. So what we really want is we want colors that are neutral and home-like and natural. You can see in the pictures on this slide that these are rooms where they look like someone's home. There's natural light and plants and lovely wood and carpeting, things that feel more soothing to the eye in terms of color. So lighting and noise are other issues. So one is that we want to be very conscious of the noise level in the classroom. Unfortunately, a lot of classrooms have a lot of hard surfaces which do not absorb noise, and when you put a lot of people in a place that has too many hard surfaces, it becomes rather loud and hard to hear. So you need to have a fair number of soft things, potentially carpets and whatnot, to absorb some of that sound, and also be conscious of any additional sound that you're adding in. So, maybe not playing loud music all day long. If you want to have music, have it be very soft and in the background, because too much noise is overwhelming. There is quite a bit of evidence to show that when people live in very noisy, kind of noise pollution cities and areas, that it's actually damaging to our mental health and well-being and our development. Lighting. So everybody enjoys natural light, true daylight. It increases student productivity. Also, some children with sensory issues have problems with unnatural light sources, particularly the kind of lighting that's often in schools. It tends to have almost like a vibration to the light that some children are particularly sensitive to. So the more natural lighting, the better. Again, just as I was mentioning before, as much as you can, like a very peaceful, home-like quality. But I enjoy going home at the end of the day because I have worked hard to create a space that is comforting, that has my things in it, that has the sound level that I like. It's a respite. It's a place to go recover after the end of often long, busy days. And children, as much as we can, if we can provide access to those kinds of things at school, we will often be pleasantly surprised by how much more productive and well-behaved children are. And you always need to make sure that you have children and sensory issues in mind. So I was talking about the lighting, but also what kinds of materials you're putting out, spaciousness. I would very much encourage you to take a look at the article from Child Mind Institute on this page in terms of thinking about how you can create environments that specifically help children with sensory processing issues to navigate that space. Next up is spatial density. So there is much research to show that when children do not have enough space in the classroom, that it can lead to them fighting over toys, being less cooperative, more aggression amongst each other. So when you are creating a child care space or an early education space, there are actually rules set up by the state and by licensing that dictate how much space you have to have per child. And in the state of California, you have to have at least 35 square feet per child. So if you have a classroom of 12 children, you have to have at least 420 square feet so that each child has 35 square feet of their own, and that can't be taken up by napping spaces. That has to be spaces for play and learning and activities. The research shows that it needs to be at least 25, so California is being a bit more generous than is necessary. But if you want children to play well, behave well, enjoy each other well, it's important to make sure that you have enough space for them. The same goes for outdoors, which we'll talk about later. We also need to make sure that we are thoughtful about play centers and areas. So in classroom spaces that include play, children should have a lot of different kinds of centers. So there should be centers related to creative activity, so painting and drawing. There should be centers related to literacy, a library area, materials related to language and literacy, numeracy space, discovery or science, block building areas, dramatic play areas, areas for manipulative kinds of toys. So we want to have these different kinds of centers because they encourage children to engage with different kinds of materials and play with different children and to develop different kinds of skills. So the more different kinds of play areas you have, the more well fleshed out your play program will be. These play areas should be well placed in the classroom. So noisy should be closer to noisy, quiet activities should not be next to noisy, so I would not put the library next to the block area. The library is a quiet area and the block area is a noisier area. So think about where you're putting things. Make sure that things that are messy have a hard surface floor that's easy to clean or is close to the sink. So carefully examine your room and think about the best place to put things. And also, when you've created an area, make sure that it's well organized. Make sure that there are low shelves that children are able to access, that their toys are placed in bins with labels, preferably both word and picture labels, so that pre-readers can still know where materials go. The more organized things are, the easier it is for children to understand the organization system, the more likely children are to clean up and put things away when they're done. And also it's easier for them to find the materials that they'd like to play with, which promotes constructive play. So areas should have boundaries when at all possible. So not a good idea to put the block area kind of in the middle of the room. It should be sectioned off so that children can't interrupt each other's play. And then finally, there should be a place for children to be alone. It is often a very long day in childcare, and children need places where they can decompress and be by themselves for a little bit. Last up, let's talk about the kinds of play materials that you want to have available. So one, you want to have things that are real and not real. So real meaning wood, not plastic, but mostly lean towards the real if you can. So naturally occurring things on the earth and in the world rather than man-made things, and as many things that are unstructured as you can, because unstructured things like the toys in the two pictures allow children to use materials in an open-ended way and be creative and to have the play head in the direction that they are interested in rather than a predetermined way that the play materials must be used. Have lots of duplicates, especially for young children. As much as we would like children to share, sharing is not really a thing. It's not really much of a thing even for adults, but taking turns definitely is something that we can be promoting instead. So when children are done with something, then it can be someone else's turn. Sharing implies that you have to give up something before you're actually done with it and have finished using it. And that's not really something that, like I said, anybody is really that great at, and particularly young children. But turn taking is good to promote. But because turn taking is a new skill, we still want to make sure that there's multiples of everything so that young children don't have to wait too long with that turn taking activity. Make sure that you have materials that are relevant to children of all demographic backgrounds, so language, culture, ethnicity, race, ability status. We want to make sure that all children have a way to enter into the play space feeling included and like themselves are represented in those materials. And then finally, this kind of goes along with unstructured materials, but I wanted to explicitly talk about this. There's something called loose parts. So loose parts are particularly like the things in the bottom picture, the little glass beads. So loose parts are just kind of random loose things that you can use any way that you want. They don't have any particular thing that has to be done with them. This is something that even, so you can see on this slide, it talks about architect Simon Nicholson, who believed that we are all creative and that loose parts in an environment will empower our creativity. So there are entire books on loose parts with young children. There are websites that you can go find. So I would very much encourage you to look up loose parts and see if you can work on adding those into the materials that children have available for their play. And as I said, to finish up, so you started this lecture with the virtual lab school environments overall lesson, and now I would like you to do the lesson related to indoor environments. When we get to our next lecture, outdoor environments, I'm also going to ask you to do the virtual lab school lesson on designing outdoor environments. So I hope you find these lessons on the virtual lab school helpful and expanding your understanding of what it means to create good play environments for children, both indoors and outdoors.